Hello, I never thought this would happen to me, but lately my thoughts have been spinning around in my head like a song that keeps playing in the background, no matter how hard you try to distract yourself. Maybe if I write it down, I'll be able to figure out my feelings. My wife Elena and I have been married for 14 years. 14 years of little habits, unspoken conversations, and that quiet rhythm that long-term couples fall into without realizing it. We're not perfect, but who is? But I thought we were a strong couple. She has always been calm, so much so that even silence with her seems complete. I am the opposite. I am the one who fills the space with empty chatter so as not to hear the sound of my own thoughts. But lately, something has changed. Nothing dramatic, nothing like in the movies, just a slight distance. She's there, but not quite with me. We still have dinner together, still talk about work, bills, our child's college plans, but something is missing. It's as if someone turned down the volume. And last Thursday, I got a text message while I was in the garage. It said, "Thank you for your order, Robert. Your dinner for two will be ready at 7:30 p.m. La Mer, downtown." I looked at it and froze. I hadn't ordered anything. I didn't even know the place. La Mer is one of those fancy restaurants we drive past and joke about, the kind that charges $80 for a glass of wine and calls it rustic charm. At first, I thought it was spam. Then I noticed a note under the confirmation. Order placed in the name of Elena White. My wife's name. I scrolled down to the attached receipt. 2 main courses. 2 glasses of red wine. The card in the database wasn't mine. It was hers. I don't know why, but my stomach clenched. My hands started to sweat. It wasn't the dinner that struck me, but the words "for two." They just hung there on the screen, heavy, echoing. She told me she was working late. Some presentation for her company, a lot of stress. She even left her laptop open at home the night before, full of spreadsheets, as proof that her life was exactly as she said it was. And yet, this text. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, I've never been jealous, but something about it didn't seem innocent. It seemed intentional. I deleted the message, then restored it. I told myself I would calmly bring it up when she got home. But when I heard her turn the key in the lock at 10:15 p.m., something inside me froze. She smiled, tired, kissed me on the cheek, and said, "Long day." Her lipstick was slightly smudged, her perfume faint but unfamiliar, not the one she always wears. I didn't ask about dinner. I didn't ask who she was with. Instead, I said, "Did you eat?" She smiled again, too quickly. "I don't have an appetite tonight." And for the first time in 14 years, I didn't believe her. The next morning, everything looked normal. The coffee pot was half full, her mug on the counter, her car keys hanging by the door. You wouldn't have known that a single text message had cracked something open inside me. But from that point on, I couldn't unsee it. That Friday, she left her phone on the kitchen table while she showered, something she never used to think twice about. I wasn't proud of what I did next, but I picked it up. The screen was locked, of course, but one thing caught my eye: her notifications were wiped clean. No previews, no texts visible, just blank space where normal life used to be. Before, I'd see small things. Messages from coworkers, her sister, the grocery store. Now, nothing. She'd started curating her silence. When she came out, I asked about her day, casual, testing. She smiled, told me she had another late meeting next Thursday. I nodded, pretending I wasn't memorizing every word. Over the weekend, I checked our shared credit card statements. I didn't find much. She was careful, but one charge stood out: La Mer, again. Thursdays, every week for the last 3 months. Always for two. The charges weren't huge, like she wasn't trying to hide an affair behind extravagant dinners, but that almost made it worse. It was routine. A habit. A ritual. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Thursday nights, La Mer. The soft clinking of wine glasses. The warm lighting. Her saying she was working late. I started noticing other changes, too small, easy to overlook things. Her perfume changed again, lighter, more floral. She started keeping a small notebook in her purse, one she never left lying around. And she began humming in the evenings, softly, absently. A tune I didn't recognize. It was like she was living in two timelines, one with me, one somewhere else. By Wednesday night, I made up my mind. I told myself it was curiosity, not paranoia. But deep down, I already knew what I was going to do. I texted her Thursday morning before she left for work. "Want me to pick you up after your meeting?" She replied almost instantly. "No, don't worry, it'll run late again. Might grab dinner near the office." That was all I needed. So I waited. At 7:15 that evening, I got in my car and drove downtown. The rain had started, not hard, just that steady drizzle that turns everything reflective, like the world's remembering something it can't let go of. La Mer was easy to find. Through the window, I saw warm candlelight, couples leaning close, waiters gliding between tables. I parked across the street, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. And then, there she was. Elena. Sitting at a small table near the back window. Alone. A single candle flickering between two wine glasses. She wasn't looking at her phone. She wasn't eating. She just sat there, hands clasped, eyes fixed on the empty seat across from her, as if waiting for someone who wasn't coming. For a moment, I almost stepped inside. But something stopped me. Because the look on her face wasn't guilt. It was grief. I couldn't stop thinking about that night. The way she'd smiled at no one. The way she'd raised her glass like she was toasting a ghost. By Monday, I was barely functioning at work. Every sound, a phone ringing, someone laughing down the hall, felt distant, like I was underwater. I kept replaying what I'd seen, wondering if I'd imagined it. Maybe she had been waiting for someone who never showed. Maybe I'd left too soon. So on Thursday, I went back. This time, I didn't park across the street. I parked in the alley behind the restaurant, far enough that she wouldn't notice me if she looked out the window. I told myself I wasn't spying, that I just needed to know the truth, one way or another. But deep down, I knew I'd already crossed that line. At 7:10, she walked in. Right on schedule. Same beige coat. Same table by the window. I waited 15 minutes before going in after her. The host smiled politely. "Table for one?" I nodded, scanning the room. She was there, facing slightly away from me, the soft gold light catching in her hair. A single glass of red wine sat in front of her again. No plate. No phone. Just stillness. "Can I sit over there?" I asked, motioning to a table 2 rows behind her. The host hesitated, then shrugged. "Sure. It's all yours." From where I sat, I could see her reflection in the window. She was murmuring something, lips moving just barely. Then she paused, tilted her head, and smiled faintly, like she was listening to someone. A waiter came by and asked if I was ready to order. I said yes and pointed to her. "I'll have whatever she's having." He gave me a strange look. "She hasn't ordered any food, sir. Just the wine." That's when it hit me, the empty plates, the receipts for 2, the toasts to nothing. She'd been ordering for someone who wasn't there. I stayed until she left. She lingered for a while, tracing the rim of her glass with one finger, then stood, left a few bills under the napkin, and walked out into the rain. When she was gone, I got up and went over to her table. The waiter rushed over, probably thinking I was lost. "Sorry," I said, "my wife left her napkin." He smiled awkwardly. "She comes every week. Same time, same table. Always leaves early." "Does she ever meet anyone?" I asked. He hesitated. "Not that I've seen. But she talks sometimes. Quietly. Like she's having a conversation." I thanked him and stepped outside. The rain was heavier now, and the streetlights blurred like watercolor through the drops. She was gone. When I got home later, she was already in bed, pretending to sleep. Her coat hung over the chair, damp from the rain. On the counter, there was a receipt. La Mer, $112.60, 2 dinners. No second diner. That night, I couldn't close my eyes. Every time I tried, I saw her sitting in that golden light, talking to someone who wasn't there, someone she'd lost, or left behind, or couldn't let go of. And I started to wonder if maybe the ghost wasn't haunting her. Maybe it was haunting us. By the next Thursday, I'd given up pretending I wasn't going back. I told myself it was for closure, that I just needed to hear what she said when she sat there talking to nobody. But really, I think I wanted proof that my marriage wasn't a hallucination. That there was still something between us, even if it was twisted beyond repair. I got there early this time, before she arrived. The host recognized me, and I told him I was waiting for a friend. He led me to a small corner table half hidden by a tall plant, from where I could see her usual spot without being obvious. The restaurant lights were soft, the kind that make everyone look kinder than they are. A pianist played something quiet, maybe Debussy, and the smell of rain drifted in every time someone opened the door. At 7:12 on the dot, she came in. The same beige coat, her hair still damp from the drizzle. She nodded to the host, the familiarity of it made my chest tighten, and he led her to that table. She ordered the same thing, 2 glasses of red wine, 1 plate of roasted duck, 1 of salmon. The same receipt I'd seen over and over. I watched as the waiter set the 2 glasses down. She smiled politely, murmured something I couldn't hear, then reached across the table, her hand hovering in midair for a few seconds before dropping back to her lap. Then she started to talk. At first, I thought she was on the phone, but no. Her phone was face down beside her purse. Her eyes weren't on the table, they were fixed on the empty chair across from her. I leaned forward, trying to catch the words between the music and the hum of voices. "Should have told you sooner," she said quietly. Her voice trembled, just barely. "You deserve that much." A pause. She nodded, as if someone had spoken. Then. I was scared. I didn't want to lose everything. My throat went dry. She smiled, that soft, practiced smile that used to mean "I forgive you," and said, "You were always so gentle. You'd never yell, not even when you should have." Another silence. Then, almost in a whisper, "I'm sorry I made you carry it alone." I felt my heart stutter. My fingers dug into the edge of the table. Carry what alone? The waiter came to refill her water. She nodded, thanked him, and when he left, she whispered, "You'd still be carving birds in the shed, wouldn't you? You always said they were meant to fly, but you never let them leave." It felt like the air had been knocked out of me. She stayed for another 10 minutes. Then she lifted her glass, that same small, haunting toast, and whispered something I could barely hear, even from where I Saturday I miss who we were. She paid, left a folded napkin on the table, and walked out into the rain. I waited until she was gone before I got up. My hands were shaking when I reached for the napkin. Inside, written in her neat, slanted handwriting, were 4 words. "For the one I hurt." That's when it hit me. She wasn't meeting someone. She was confessing to a ghost, mine. The version of me she betrayed, years ago. The version of us that never really recovered. And I realized that, for all these years, she'd been trying to atone for something I didn't even know had happened. That night, when she came home, I couldn't pretend anymore. The image of her sitting there, talking to that empty chair, whispering "I'm sorry I made you carry it alone," had burned itself into me. She walked through the door around 9. Her coat was wet again, her lipstick faded, her face pale like she'd been crying. She saw me sitting at the kitchen table and froze for half a second before composing herself. "Hey," she said softly, hanging up her coat. "You're up late." I nodded. "Yeah. Couldn't sleep." She smiled, that tired, automatic smile she'd been wearing for months, and reached for a glass of water. "Long day." La Mer," I said. Her hand stopped mid-reach. "What?" "La Mer. The restaurant. You've been there every Thursday for the past 3 months." For a moment, she didn't move. Then she let out a quiet laugh, brittle around the edges. "Robert, you're seriously tracking my credit card now?" "I went there," I said. "I saw you." That wiped the laugh right off her face. The color drained from her cheeks, leaving her looking almost translucent under the kitchen light. "What do you mean you saw me?" she asked carefully. "I sat 2 tables behind you," I said. "You weren't with anyone. You ordered for 2, and then you talked to no one." Her mouth opened, then closed again. She looked at me like I'd just reached into her chest and pulled something fragile into the open. Finally, she whispered, "You shouldn't have followed me." "And you shouldn't have lied," I said quietly. The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. Rain tapped against the window, the same soft rhythm that always seemed to accompany her secrets. She sank into the chair across from me, hands trembling slightly. "I wasn't lying," she said after a long pause. "Not about where I was. Just about why." "Then tell me," I said. "Tell me why you've been having dinner with a ghost." She laughed, not mocking, just hollow. "Because I have to." I frowned. "You have to?" She looked at me then, really looked at me, and for the first time in years, I saw guilt carved into every line of her face. "It's the night I was supposed to tell you about him." My chest tightened. "Tell me what?" Her eyes shimmered. "That I cheated on you." It wasn't loud, that confession. It came out like an exhale, soft, exhausted, almost relieved. My first instinct was to deny it, to tell her I must have misheard. But her eyes, red, raw, unflinching, told me everything I didn't want to know. "When?" I finally managed. 8 years ago," she whispered. "It was short. Stupid. I ended it, but I never told you. I thought, if I could pretend hard enough, it would disappear. But it didn't." She rubbed her palms together like she was cold. "That restaurant, that was where I was going to tell you. I sat there, waiting for you to join me. But I lost my nerve. I came home, and you were carving something in the shed. You looked so peaceful. I couldn't do it." She smiled, brokenly. "And now every year, I go back. Same table. Same meal. Like if I keep replaying it, maybe someday I'll get it right." I didn't speak. I couldn't. She looked up at me, tears streaking down her cheeks. "You were supposed to be sitting in that chair." And suddenly, I saw it, all those dinners, all those toasts to no one. She wasn't talking to a ghost. She was talking to the version of me who never got the truth. I wanted to hate her. I wanted to yell, to throw something, to feel something. But all I felt was tired. After a long silence, I said, "You've been confessing to a memory." She nodded. "Because the real you wouldn't listen. And that somehow hurt even more than the cheating itself." I don't know how long we sat there after that. The rain had settled into a steady rhythm, and the kitchen light buzzed faintly, the kind of small, persistent noise that fills every silence you can't handle. Elena's hands were shaking. She wasn't looking at me anymore, just staring at her reflection in the dark window. When she finally spoke again, her voice sounded thin, like it was being pulled from somewhere deep. "It was brief," she said. 3 months. Maybe 4. His name was Adrian. He worked at the firm back then, one of those people who always made everything sound exciting. He noticed me. Really noticed me. And after years of feeling like furniture in my own house, I didn't realize how badly I needed that. I didn't say anything. My throat was dry, my chest heavy. She went on, her words trembling but relentless. "It started with lunch. Then drinks. Then one night I didn't come home on time. You called, remember? I said the meeting ran late. I did remember. I remembered pacing in the kitchen, watching the clock, worrying if she'd gotten a flat tire. I'd even left the porch light on for her. I told myself it wasn't love," she continued. "It was just noise. Something to drown out how quiet everything had gotten between us. You were always out in the shed, working, carving. I thought you were happy in your silence. I didn't realize you were just waiting for me to come out and say something." She laughed softly, then a tired, broken laugh. "And then one day, he said he was falling for me. I panicked. I ended it that night. Came home, and you were sanding something in the workshop. You smiled and asked if I wanted tea. I remember thinking, he has no idea. And then I hated myself. I stared at her, and in that moment, I didn't see the woman who betrayed me. I saw someone trapped, caught between who she was and who she pretended to be." She wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand. "Every Thursday, I told you I had a late meeting. But I went back to that restaurant. I'd sit there and order for two, and every time, I'd think, this is the night I'll tell him. I'd even rehearse it. Sometimes I'd start crying before the food came. The waiters must have thought I was insane." Her voice cracked. "And then the years went by. You stopped asking where I was going. I stopped explaining. And it became a ritual. Not punishment exactly, but a way to remember what I'd done. To sit across from the version of you that still deserved the truth." My chest ached. "Why now?" I asked quietly. "Why tell me after all these years?" She looked at me then, her eyes swollen and tired but fierce with honesty. "Because you finally saw me," she said. "And I couldn't lie anymore." The words hung in the air like smoke. I didn't know what to do with them, with her. Part of me wanted to reach for her hand. Another part wanted to walk out the door and never look back. Instead, I just nodded. Slowly. "I think," I said, my voice trembling, "you've been living with a ghost so long, you forgot what it's like to be alive." She opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. And in that quiet moment, I realized her confession wasn't about saving our marriage. It was about saving herself from the weight of silence she'd been carrying all these years. And now that silence was mine, too. I didn't sleep that night. Neither did she. We just drifted around the house like strangers who used to know how to move in sync. She stayed in the living room, curled on the couch with a blanket she didn't need. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at a mug of cold coffee, trying to decide what hurt more, the betrayal, or how long she'd been carrying it without me noticing. At some point, around 3 a.m., I caught our reflection in the dark window, two shapes, motionless, separated by a wall of years. For the first time, I realized that maybe the real damage hadn't started with her affair. Maybe it had started when we stopped really seeing each other. By morning, the anger that had been boiling under my skin had gone quiet. Not gone, exactly, just tired. The kind of tired that sits in your bones. She came into the kitchen, eyes swollen, hair still damp from the shower. For a second, she looked like the woman I married, before the distance, before the lies. She sat down across from me, the same place she'd sat the night before, and whispered, "Say something." I did. "I don't know how to hate you," I said. "And I don't know how to forgive you either." Her lip trembled. "Then what do we do?" I looked at her for a long time. "Maybe nothing. Maybe we finally stop pretending everything can be fixed." She nodded, tears spilling again, but she didn't reach for me. Neither of us did. There was no grand gesture, no dramatic collapse into each other's arms. Just quiet acceptance, that strange, heavy calm that comes when a truth finally stops hiding. Later that day, I went out to the workshop. The place smelled of cedar and varnish, the same way it always did. I picked up one of my old carvings, a small wooden bird, half finished, the wings still rough at the edges. I hadn't touched it in months. It reminded me of what she'd said that night at the restaurant. "You always said they were meant to fly, but you never let them leave." I think I finally understood what she meant. I'd spent years trying to freeze our life in place, sanding down every problem, carving away every imperfection until what was left looked fine. But all that did was trap us both. Her in guilt, me in denial. Maybe her ritual at that restaurant wasn't just penance. Maybe it was her way of letting the truth live somewhere even if I wasn't ready to hear it. That evening, she came into the workshop. She stood in the doorway, watching me work, her voice barely a whisper. "I never wanted to hurt you, Robert." I set down the carving knife. "You didn't just hurt me," I said quietly. "You hurt yourself too." The difference is, I didn't know it until now. She nodded, eyes full of that same old sadness, the one that never really leaves when love starts dying slowly. For the first time, I saw her not as the woman who cheated, but as the woman who'd been silently carrying the ghost of that mistake for nearly a decade. And it hit me, we'd both been living with ghosts. Hers wore guilt. Mine wore silence. Weeks passed. The confession stopped echoing in every corner of the house. At first, that silence felt wrong, too big, too empty, but slowly, I realized it wasn't emptiness at all. It was space. Space where anger used to live. We didn't separate right away. Maybe we were both afraid of what life looked like without the other standing nearby. There were still dishes to wash, laundry to fold, groceries to buy, the small routines that make two people feel like one unit even when they've already broken apart. But things had shifted. Her laughter came quieter now, less forced. Mine, when it happened, felt unfamiliar, like it belonged to a man I used to be. Sometimes I'd find her sitting by the window with a book she wasn't reading, her eyes far away. I didn't ask what she was thinking about. I already knew. One Thursday, she didn't go to La Mer. She stayed home instead, cooked pasta, opened a bottle of wine. It felt strange, sitting across from her in our own kitchen instead of watching her through a rain-streaked window. We ate in silence for a while. Then she said, "I can't go there anymore." I nodded. "You don't need to." "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner," she whispered. "I know," I said. "And I'm sorry I didn't ask sooner." We sat there for a long time after that, not speaking. The kind of quiet that isn't painful anymore, just honest. Later that night, after she went to bed, I took the old carving from the workshop, the bird I'd left unfinished all those years ago. I sanded it down, smoothed its wings, and drilled a small hole in the base. I tied it with thin string and hung it by the window. It swayed gently in the breeze, light catching on its wings. For once, I didn't think about grounding it, painting it, perfecting it. I just let it move. That's when I understood what acceptance really is. It's not forgiveness, not forgetting. It's learning to live with the weight of what happened without letting it drag you under. Elena and I didn't suddenly become a happy couple again. We didn't make grand promises or tearful declarations. We just learned to exist with what we knew. Sometimes love doesn't die with a bang, it just changes shape until it becomes something quieter. That next Thursday, I heard rain again, the same slow rhythm that used to mean she was gone. I half expected her to grab her coat and leave. But instead, she came into the workshop, barefoot, holding 2 mugs of tea. "Mind if I stay?" she asked. I just nodded, moving over so she could sit beside me. We didn't talk about the past. We didn't talk about the affair. We just listened to the rain together. And for the first time in years, the sound didn't hurt. It's been almost a year now. The air smells different these days, lighter, maybe, or maybe that's just what peace feels like when it finally fits inside your chest. Elena and I live quieter lives. We still share the same roof, the same kitchen, the same garden that she forgets to water and I keep meaning to fix. But something has changed between us. We're not trying to mend what broke anymore, we're just learning how to live with the cracks. Some nights she still wakes up crying. Other nights she falls asleep with her hand resting lightly on mine, like she's afraid to let go completely. I don't pull away. I've stopped trying to decide what that touch means. Last Thursday, I drove to La Mer. It wasn't planned. I was out running errands, and the rain started, soft at first, then steady, the kind of rain that feels like memory. I parked across the street and just watched the glow of the windows. Couples inside leaned close over candlelight, the pianist playing something slow. I thought I might see her there out of habit, but of course she wasn't. The table by the window was empty. Just 2 glasses, side by side, waiting to be cleared. I went in. The host, older now, smiled politely. "Table for one?" he asked. For two, I said. Then, after a beat, actually, just one. He seated me at her old table. The chair across from me was still there, still catching the light the same way. I ordered a glass of red wine and sat quietly while the rain tapped against the glass. It wasn't sadness that filled me this time, it was understanding. Every Thursday she'd come here to talk to the ghost of our marriage, to confess to the version of me she'd betrayed. And all this time, I'd been chasing that same ghost too. I raised my glass, just like she used to, and whispered, "Here's to the truth." The wine was bitter, but honest. Before I left, I took out a small wooden bird from my coat pocket, the one I'd finished carving months ago. Smooth, simple, its wings open mid-flight. I set it on the table beside the candle. For the one we both let go, I said. When I stepped outside, the rain had stopped. The street smelled of wet earth and roses from the florist next door. I stood there for a long time, watching the lights reflect on the pavement, and felt something unexplainable, a quiet release. Forgiveness, maybe. Or just the moment when you stop needing it. When I got home, Elena was waiting in the doorway. No words, no questions. Just a look that said she knew where I'd been. I nodded once. She smiled, soft, fragile, and turned off the porch light. We went inside together. And that's how it ends, not with a grand apology or some cinematic closure, but with two people learning to exist after the storm. Love doesn't always survive the truth. But sometimes we do. And that's enough.